Hello and welcome to another Brawl video. This week my supporters on Patreon voted for this white, blue and black or Esper colored Ninjas deck featuring Splinter, Heretical Rat as our commander. This 3 mana 2/4 says if an ability of a ninja creature we control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. So it's like having a roaming throne for just 3 mana. And then for 1 and a blue, target ninja cannot be blocked this turn, which is a very useful mana sink in the late game to keep hitting the opponent with our ninjas, especially if you consider that a lot of our ninjas will enter using the ninjutsu or sneak ability, which allows us to hit the opponent once, maybe enable that creature's ability and even double it with Splinter in play, but then afterwards we might struggle to keep hitting the opponent with that same creature. Now Splinter also solves that problem by making them unblockable, so we can keep hitting the opponent and keep enabling their abilities. So then if we take a look at our deck breakdown, our game plan becomes very clear. We've got lots of cheap ninjutsu and sneak enablers. These are often 1 mana flying or unblockable creatures, so we can set up our ninjas on the following turns with ninjutsu or sneak, and that's the next large category here. All these ninjas will have some sort of ability when they enter or hit the opponent, so we can also double those with Splinter, and they'll benefit from all those cheap enablers to set them up. And then we have some more ninjas that have some nice abilities that we can maybe double with Splinter, even if they don't necessarily have ninjutsu or sneak built into them. And then we've got our additional interaction, lots of instant speed removal spells to deal with the opponent's game plan or clear a path for our ninjas to keep attacking, although a lot of our ninjas will already provide a bit of interaction as they enter the battlefield or hit the opponent. And then the miscellaneous section has a few ramp cards, as well as Mother of Runes, which can also maybe make our ninjas unblockable using the protection ability, and Smoke Shroud is another nice synergistic card here to give our creatures flying, and we can even get it back out of the graveyard. So that's our deck in a nutshell. Now for the deep dive, starting with our enablers. Ornithopter is by far the best one, since it's free to play, has flying, so we can still attack if it goes unblocked, put our ninjutsu or sneak creature into play, and then immediately redeploy Ornithopter to set up our next ninjutsu or sneak creature. We've got a Prehistoric Pet, also a ninja, so has a few synergies there as well, and then cannot be blocked by creatures with a greater power. We've got a Thousand-Faced Shadow, which is both an enabler as well as a payoff if we can set it up with ninjutsu, which even gets a discount on Arena, although even the paper version where we ninjutsu for 4 mana is still very good. Then a Fairy Seer is one of the best enablers, as it lets us scry 2 when it enters, so that can smooth out our draws, and then if we pick it back up and replay it, we'll get to scry 2 again. Can also Surveil 1 with a Fairy Dream Thief, or scry 1 and drain the opponent for 1 with a Dream Beavers. And then we've got a whole bunch of unblockable creatures as well, with a Mist-Cloaked Herald, Slitherblade, Triton Shorestalker, and even the Changeling Outcast cannot block or be blocked, and is a changeling, so it's also a ninja. And then a Spyglass Siren's another good one, making a map token when it enters. Network Disruptor can tap target permanent, so it can also maybe clear a path. And then we've got the Invisible Stalker at 2 mana, which has hexproof, so it cannot be removed by the opponent all that easily, and then also cannot be blocked. So it's a little pricier, so a bit more expensive to set up your ninjutsu synergies, but against removal-heavy decks it may still be worth it. And then we've got Tetsuko Mezawa, which can also make other creatures unblockable, which can also help out. And then Baleful Strix draws a card when it enters, has flying and death touch, so the opponent's not going to be able to block it all that easily, and then can also provide additional value when we redeploy it. And then Kaito Shizuki is also both an enabler and a payoff, can make an unblockable ninja token, but can also draw additional cards if we've attacked. And then we get to the actual ninjutsu and sneak creatures. Leonardo is also a good enabler, since we can give it first strike for 1 and a white, so the threat of activation means it's often going to go unblocked on the first couple turns, and then later we could still sneak it for 5 mana. Then a Leonardo Cutting Edge has a lifelink and can pick up additional +1 counters when we gain life, so also benefits from Splinter in play. There's the Moon Circuit Hacker, which is also very nice, as we can scry 2 and then draw a card, so that can also maybe trigger twice. The Silencer can destroy opposing creatures or planeswalkers. The Prowler can give our creatures a lifelink and death touch. Skull Snatcher gives us some graveyard hate. Then there's the other Splinter giving ninjas +1/+1. Dark Leo and Shredder, one of the better ones, giving our attacking ninjas death touch, and then if it hits the opponent we get a token. At 5 or more ninjas can also halve the opponent's life total, which can maybe even trigger twice with Splinter, so we get to make 2 tokens and halve the opponent's life total twice. The Silver for Master even gets a nice discount on Arena compared to the paper version, and then we'll give our ninjas and rogue creatures +1/+1, since a lot of the enablers aren't necessarily ninjas, but a lot of them are rogues, so they'll still benefit from the Master, and then ninjutsu abilities also get a 1 mana discount going forward, which does not apply to the sneak ability. The Turncode's another good one. Even if we just cast it with Splinter in play, we can exile 2 opposing creatures, and especially with Sneak, if we can put the Turncode in play with Splinter, we can now exile 2 opposing creatures, which the opponent's not going to get back, even if they answer the Turncode afterwards. Then there's the Prosperous Thief making treasure tokens. Miss Syndicate Naga makes an extra copy of itself, so it can also get out of hand with Splinter doubling that effect. Biting Palm Ninja gives us some hand disruption. Nashi can provide additional card advantage. There's Karai, which can sneak and put a creature from our graveyard onto the battlefield. We've got Yuriko, even without being our commander, can still ninjutsu it, and then hit the opponent and draw extra cards while damaging the opponent equal to the mana value. We've got the Moonblade Shinobi making a Flying Illusion token, which can then also enable future ninjutsu creatures. There's the Specialist bouncing an opposing creature when it enters. There's the Ninja of the Deep Hours to draw extra cards, as well as the Ingenious Infiltrator, which applies to all our ninjas. There's Shark Shredder, which can reanimate a creature from the opponent's graveyard with First Strike, and then that creature will still enter attacking, so it can hit the opponent with regular damage. And then there's a Kaito Planeswalker, which also has the ninjutsu ability, and then the +1 emblem is especially powerful in a ninja deck. And then the Okiba Gang Shinobi can make the opponent discard 2 cards when it hits them, so with Splinter that can turn into 4 cards. And then Fallen Shinobi can also hit the opponent and then let us cast one of their spells for free that we exiled from their library, so it can also be very swingy. And then Ink Eyes can also reanimate creatures from the opponent's graveyard. And then taking a look at our other ninjas, there's Alita, which can pick up additional +1 counters, maybe scry 1 with Splinter in play as well, as another creature enters. Super Shredder is excellent with our various fetch lanes, but also putting a creature in play with ninjutsu means that another creature is leaving the battlefield, which will also trigger Super Shredder to pick up additional +1 counters. Nashi can also maybe provide a bit of card advantage if it hits the opponent. Satoru is also very nice if we pair it with other ninjutsu creatures, maybe drawing 2 cards now with Splinter each time. A Graveshifter is a changeling, so can also trigger twice with Splinter to return a creature from our graveyard to our hand. And then Krang and Shredder can also provide immediate value when it enters or attacks, so it can also be very nice. And then our removal includes the classics, Swords to Plowshares in white, Wash Away as a counterspell for opposing commanders for just 1 mana in blue, and then in black there's Cut Down, Fatal Push, and Requiting Hex, as well as a Get Lost and Bitter Triumph, which can also target opposing planeswalkers. And then in the miscellaneous section we have a bit of mana acceleration with Dark Ritual, could even play our Splinter on turn 1, and then we've got Arcane Signet and Patchwork Banner to pump up our ninjas, as well as the aforementioned Smoke Shroud to give them +1/+1 and flying. And then Brainstorm can also give us a bit of card selection, especially if we can then shuffle unwanted cards away with our fetch lanes afterwards, since we do have kind of this mix of enablers and payoffs, so sometimes we need more enablers, and sometimes we draw too many of them and we want to get rid of some of them. And then Mother of Rune's another good way to protect our creatures, or make sure that they can keep hitting the opponent as well. And then I've sorted the mana base here. We've got fetchable lands and fetch lands on the left, and then the remaining dual lands on the right. So we've got a couple basics we can find, and then all the shock lands and surveil lands in each color pair. I'm less convinced about the surveil lands in this build since we do have a relatively low curve, so we don't often want to have to deal with a bunch of tapped lands, so we can potentially cut these and maybe replace them with the channel lands instead, which can also offer a bit more interaction. But otherwise the fetch lands are still great to enable some of our synergies, as well as to fix our colors. And then we've got plenty of other mana fixing, including Cavern of Souls to make our ninjas uncounterable. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the draw, facing Raph and Mikey. So yeah, this one's going to be tough. We probably don't have many ways to slow down our opponent, and then once they slam down their commander, they can inflict a lot of pain. So we need a particularly fast draw. This one has a Leonardo, which can maybe get pretty big, especially with Splinter. And then the Shinobi might be able to make them discard. So this one's got potential, although I still think our opponent's pretty heavily favored. So we can Fairy Seer with a blue-white land and look for more land drops. Alright, I guess we'll use this one. Could also get basic islands, since my life total is gonna matter in this matchup. And then, what do we think of Shark Shredder in this matchup? They're not gonna have many creatures in the graveyard, I don't think. And then keep the Hallowed Fountain. So, can expect our opponent to ramp on 2, maybe play some 4-mana ramp card, getting 2 additional lanes, and then play Raph and Mikey on the following turn. For now, we get to put in Leonardo, and replay the Fairy. Okay, Splinter, another way to pump up our creatures. Do I like Arcane Signet? So next turn probably play the Radical Rat, so Leonardo triggers twice. And then the turn after we want to set up the Okiba Gang Shinobi maybe, if they still have cards in hand. So then I don't really have time to play either one of these. Yeah, it's a close call. Yeah, there's a Dragonstorm, so assuming they have a land in hand, then we will be staring down Raph and Mikey already next turn. So there's not a whole lot I can do about it. Alright, let's see if they have the land. They do not. Alright, that's huge. They can still maybe tap down a creature with a ring. But yeah, I'll still be able to ninjutsu the Shinobi and get their last 2 cards. Although they'll still be able to cast their commander regardless. Opponent did not use the ring. Possible they have some other removal in hand. Alright, we get to hit them. And they had some nice beefy dragons in hand. Now if we still had Super Shredder, we could have maybe gotten those back. Alright, let's see what happens with Raph and Mikey. Hits the biggest Worldspine Worm. We're not dead yet, thanks to the life gain from Leonardo. Can we present lethal 9, 10, 11? Can make it 12 with a Smoke Shroud. So yeah, that should do it. Just enough damage here. Sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing Sazh Katzroy, so green, kind of landfall-y ramp deck. Our hand is promising, except for the lack of black mana, but with a Brainstorm we should be able to find it. And then we have multiple enablers, including probably our best one in Ornithopter. For now, I think I still play Herald over Brainstorming. So maybe next turn I can Brainstorm, maybe draw into a fetch land, which I can then still use to shuffle my deck. Alright, found black mana anyways. So this is more of a setup turn with Satoru. And then next turn I could play Splinter, and then try and set up ninjutsu. Opponent ramping with a World Wagon. Okay, Silencer we could already ninjutsu. But yeah, I would rather get Splinter down. Our opponent plays their commander, can find a bird or basic land. Opponent gets the basic. Alright, and we drew Windswept Heath, so that's an exciting draw. So maybe get another black source here. Godless Shrine will do. Can attack, and this is going to be a bit of a blowout. As we can ninjutsu, and then the Shinobi is going to trigger twice. And Satoru also triggers twice, drawing 2 cards. And our opponent's going to have to discard 4. And discarding a couple pump spells. And then Fight Rigging and Speaker. Replay Ornithopter. And that also triggers Satoru, so that's another great synergy. And we have a backup fetch lane to maybe pair with the Brainstorm. In hand, we've got some more ninjas. Opponent with the Onslaught. For X equals 2. So they get to manifest, make a bunch of 4/4s. But we still have our flying and unblockable creatures to enable ninjutsu. Can see the synergy with Sazh and the +1 counters on the manifests. So don't have any great blocks. We fall to 9. But now we can put our removal to use. So when this deals damage, I get to return a creature from graveyard. Not particularly helpful right now. This one lets us discard to then destroy a creature, so that one we can certainly use. This could maybe get some food. Could also brainstorm and maybe find something a little bit more exciting. Could also use Splinter to make ninjas unblockable. And then with a Shinobi I can discard their last 2 cards. So maybe that's the play. Just use Shinobi. And then we can still sneak the Silencer. Could maybe leave an extra blocker back, but 2 creatures are going to get destroyed. Yeah, maybe the Mistcloaked Herald can stay back. And get to draw 2 cards. So we're not going to have any difficulty discarding to our ninjutsu trigger here. And the opponent has seen enough. I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Rofellos. So good thing that we have Fatal Push to take it out. And then Fairy Seer is going to be looking for more answers. And then can maybe start by fetching an island, or I can just play the Pathway on blue. Yeah, I guess I'm fine just playing the Fairy. Only downside is if I like both cards, I might have to shuffle one away with a fetch lane. Super Shredder is pretty good with all these fetch lanes. So I guess I don't mind drawing into it. Because we can play it before needing to Fatal Push. But that does mean I'll have to shuffle the other one away, of course. But that seems acceptable. So get a Swamp. And then next turn I can banner into Fatal Push. Alright, maybe save the fetch lane until after we play Splinter. And name Ninja. And grow Shredder. And Bristly Bill, we should be able to outgrow. So Splinter, and then I can still ninjutsu Leonardo. And if I want to replay the fairy, I need to get an untapped land. This also triggers Shredder. So we're going off. Leonardo triggers twice. And look for more action. I guess a Requiting Hex is fine. Can always sink mana into making our ninjas unblockable, and our opponent scoops it up. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Geralf, so a mono blue deck looking to cast multiple spells in the same turn to make some zombies. Our hand has potential. Want to save the fetch land for Super Shredder so we can grow it. And then say no to the Prowler. Our Fiend's Tower is tapped. So it's a little awkward here. Can use a fetch to play Shredder, and then maybe next turn set up the Biting Palm. Or I can just play tapped Fiend's Tower now to get it out of the way. And then maybe next turn still go for Super Shredder anyways. Nah, I think I get Shredder down now. And then next turn we can decide how to proceed. Could also ninjutsu Nashi, since it's only 3 mana on Arena. Kaito is also promising. And now Taigam, a way to get back a spell after a couple turns. So Biting Palm is maybe the most pressing. Just so we can check out their hand. So we'll attack and ninjutsu, which also enables Super Shredder once again. See what they're working with. Alright, Narset to prevent drawing, Fading Hope as a bounce spell, Brainstorm's pretty good too. And then Temporal Sundering eventually to take an extra turn. I guess we don't care too much about Narset right now. Fading Hope might actually be their best card just because it's such an efficient tempo play. Especially if they reset Super Shredder with it. Opponent goes Brainstorming. And a Spell Bomb is still gonna end up bouncing Shredder here. Alrighty, so go to attackers, see what happens, and then we can decide from there. Could still ninjutsu Nashi, perhaps. So our opponent bounces Shredder. I guess now I could still ninjutsu. That's actually pretty good value. And is Kaito better? They're both pretty great, actually. Now let's go for Kaito. They should have bounced before we were in the declare blocker step. And then now Kaito can draw. Although the emblem's good too. Still want to draw first. And then I like Requiting Hex, don't need the Siren. Alright, the only drawback is that I don't have a great ninjutsu enabler in play unless we want to pick up the Biting Palm again. But we can Hex Taigam and then take it from there. Because yeah, had they bounced my creature before no blockers were declared, I would not have been able to ninjutsu. The timing is also slightly different between ninjutsu and sneak, so that might have caught them off guard. So one play we could make is Super Shredder, Hex, so this picks up an extra counter, and then still play Dream Thief. Alright, our opponent seems to have disconnected. They did not like that play. So try Shredder. Now with the fetch land as well. And then it might be time for Kaito to Emblem just to get the game over with. But if our opponent's not coming back soon, the game's gonna be over anyways. Also, pro tip, if you're playing Magic Arena on a mobile device, simply closing the app does not concede the game. So I think that's leading to a lot of these roping situations where people are maybe on mobile, they close the game thinking it'll concede the game, only to find out that your opponent's patiently waiting. So yeah, if you are playing on mobile, just make sure to concede before closing the app. So Plains is fine, and then we can still play Leonardo as well. Alright. Hit you for 8. And then next turn we should get there. Alright, and there we have it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Hei Bai with 5 color shrines. Hand is a bit clunky here with all these tapped lands. So we'll look for something different. We have double Kaito, no cheap enabler once again, Super Shredder, not the best as our only ninjutsu enabler. So I think we get a mulligan again. Alright, this is a bit better. Although still not perfect. The mana's once again not quite working out. But I think we try it. And then Inkai's at 5 might be a little too pricey. So on turn 2 at least I can play both 1-drops and then set up Kaito on 3. Opponent starting with birds, now Sterling Grove to protect their enchantments. Alright, so we'll name Ninja. And then pick up the Siren since that's better value. And if they were holding on to Swords to Plowshares, they're not going to be able to target Kaito just yet. For now, probably want to draw. We're a bit light on action. Tapping the birds is also reasonable to slow down Hei Bai by a turn. And then Hacker's not bad. Can ninjutsu it alongside playing Splinter next turn. The only drawback is that it leaves us without an enabler on the battlefield. But I'll keep it. And then the Prowler can also maybe help us attack into a 4-4. Alright, opponents with more ways to protect their enchantments. And a Rest in Peace to exile the graveyards. Okay, that works for me. So what's our plan? I think it's still Splinter plus Hacker. Somewhat tempted to tap down the birds now. Or we can go for the emblem to amp up the pressure a bit.
Just try to keep up.
So we get to trigger this twice. And then probably say no to both. Want to find some interaction for creatures. Probably can't say no to the Mist Syndicate. That's a lot of pressure with Splinter in play especially. Opponent did have a 4th lane, so tapping the birds would not have prevented Hei Bai. And the Crescent Island Temple. Can get an idea of what else our opponent is playing. A lot of sweepers actually. Alright, so with that in mind, probably making another emblem here. And then Splinter can also make our ninjas unblockable, so we're pretty close to dealing lethal. I think for now just attack, see how they want to block. And then there's a few things we can do. Okay, double jump. So I could ninjutsu with Kaito, the only drawback being if they do have, let's say, Swords to Plowshares in hand, they can swords my creature, whereas they wouldn't be able to target Kaito. So I could also just let damage happen, and then play another creature afterwards, but I think we'll give this a try. And then Naga over Thousand-Faced Shadow, probably. Could make a copy of a hacker. It's actually pretty nice too, honestly. Sure. And this also plays around our opponent having removal, since we get extra creatures no matter what. Alright, and then we can let damage happen, unless we want to ninjutsu the Prowler as well, but I don't think we do. We get to draw a bunch more cards, opponent's at 1. I guess had I ninjutsu'd the Prowler, I would have had lethal, because I could have ninjutsu'd with the unblocked Thousand-Faced Shadow. But yeah, with their opponent at 1 life, they were pretty dead regardless. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing Djeru and Hazoret, so Boros Legends aggro. Our hand is functional. Ornithopter definitely makes things a lot better. Can maybe ninjutsu this on turn 2. And then I can afford to either get like a Godless Shrine to play Prehistoric Pet, or I can get a tapped Survey Land, like blue-black, so I can next turn ninjutsu the hacker. Yeah, the problem is I cannot get blue, black, and white. And since the fetch is black, I need to get a black source. So I think I'm just getting a tapped Survey Land, because I still need a 3rd land, so this ideally enters untapped. So then I can make it blue-black, or I can get a tri-land as well. But I think the plan next turn is to go for the hacker. And swords is difficult to turn down, so I won't. Yeah, let's see if we get to connect here. Opponent fetching. And Emrakul gets shuffled back. Alright, I don't think we need a Skull Snatcher, but I'll keep the planes. And then now I can play the pets alongside Ornithopter. And then we have 2 pretty expensive cards, so it's nice to have a bit of ramp with a banner. Could play the banner and still maybe Swords a blocker, so the hacker can keep attacking. Opponent with Chromatic Lantern, Mox Amber. Alright, I mean I could also just go for Splinter here to be fair. Although it's just so we would get to scry 2 twice. And then loot a bunch. Which is fine, but I kind of like the banner more. And then probably don't need Requiting Hex. The land is fine. So then I have to discard a card. So yeah, next turn we can ninjutsu Ink Eyes. They do not have any creatures in the graveyard yet, however. Krang and Shredder were also close to casting, so maybe I still ditch the land anyways. And then hopefully we'll draw another land when the time calls for it. And there's Djeru and Hazoret. Does not have haste since they have too many cards in hand. But they can now tap the Mox. And a Mishra's Command for 0. Alright, in response we'll Swords it. And our opponent scoops it up. So does that mean that Emrakul is the only legendary creature in their deck? No, it's looking at the top 6. So they probably just have a bunch of random Eldrazi. And it's more of a combo build as opposed to a build with a lot of legendaries. But yeah, I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Flubs the Fool. Our hand's got a lot of enablers. A Super Shredder can grow with the fetches. Missing an actual ninjutsu creature. So this one's borderline. I do get to surveil with a Dream Thief, which helps. So maybe it's good enough. Another unblockable creature. Blue mana could become a bottleneck, but I think I still prefer the Surveil from Dream Thief for now. And that way I also get to save my fetches for Shredder in case I draw into another land. Outcast, more unblockable creatures. This one I can cast alongside a blue creature, but at that point I'm better off just playing Super Shredder. Opponent did have the Lightning Bolt as it turns out. And now Dark Leo is not bad either. Yeah, I can just cast it. And then it's not like Flubs is going to want to block. And then next turn play Super Shredder. Fetch and then play a blue creature as well. Seems okay. Still get a blue source. And of course, of Crucifix we can also attack into. And yeah, it's not going to take too long to get the 5 required ninjas in play to half their life total. None of these are ninjas. Maybe should have gone for the 2 toughness Slither Blade. But yeah, next turn the plan is Splinter, fetch, grow Shredder twice. Opponent's also helping. And I Still Explore is a good one, especially with a Courser. But at least the fetch lands have a drawback with Super Shredder in play. So we've got a lot riding on our Mutant Ninja. And get a Hallowed Fountain. Attacking ninjas have Death Touch. Opponent takes it. So yeah, we get to half their life total here. And we'll see what they can come up with. And of course Dark Leo triggered twice with Splinter, so we get to half their life total twice. Putting them all the way to 4. So they maybe don't have as much life to spare as they would have liked. Unable to scream on top, get to see it thanks to Course of Crucifix, revealing the top card to both players. Could maybe draw into it with a stock up, but at this point the damage has been done. Alright, opponent's gonna Witness Protection the Dark Leo, and then shuffle away Unable to Scream. So this is no longer a ninja, just a regular old citizen, so won't be able to target it with Splinter anymore. Yeah, usually these enchantments are reserved for commanders, but our opponent had to deal with Dark Leo. Up to 7 from Courser. And they still seem kinda dead. So, can activate Splinter on Super Shredder. They have 1 unknown card in hand. But yeah, opponent's gonna scoop it up here. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing a Liliana Heretical Healer, so a mono-black sacrifice deck. Our hand is lacking some ninjutsu creatures, perhaps. I do like Baleful Strix, Stalker and Blade as good enablers. But overall it feels a little underpowered. Okay, this one is lacking a ninjutsu enabler, but it does have some other good elements I like. So we can try it. And then Specialist, another ninjutsu creature. Could be worth keeping. Can also still just cast it normally, and it's pretty good with Splinter in play. And I get to keep up Wash Away on the off chance that they can Dark Ritual into Liliana, I guess. Okay, for now Tiny Bones, and draw the Outcast. Would have been pretty nice last turn as well to set up ninjutsu. So then I think it's just Splinter, keep up Wash Away for now. As much as I want to get to Outcast in play. Opponent's just gonna take out Splinter. In which case, I guess I just play Outcast and pass. Could ninjutsu the Shinobi next turn. Could just play the Hacker, but lines up pretty poorly against Tiny Bones. Unless we maybe bounce it later. I think I just pass. That way we can counter whatever we want, and not just Liliana. Staff of Completion's fine. And a Consuming Corruption to take out the Outcast. Yeah, I guess I can fight over it, just so we can set up the Shinobi and hopefully get lucky. And we got Shieldred and Liliana. Go for Shieldred. And our opponent scoops it up. I'll take it. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw. Facing Krang, Mono Blue Affinity. Our hand's decent. Dream Thief to enable either Eureka or Infiltrator. And Swamp, I'm okay with. Emissary, we could still potentially Fatal Push if we enable Revolt first, which we can also do by picking up a creature with ninjutsu. So for now, I guess Infiltrator at least can attack into Emissary without any additional help. So we might prefer that over going for Eureka. And then next turn, we've got a few options. Emissary can get back the Oaken Siren. Goes for a Midnight Clock instead. Okay. So this turn could just play Splinter and then attack, see what happens. There's a chance they have a wash away up, and then they could counter my commander. So then I might be better off with a different plan, like playing Kaito, or setting up the Dream Thief to enable ninjutsu for next turn, which I also don't mind. Yeah, I'll attack. See what they want to do, and then probably go for Kaito. Right, now the Shark Shredder's pretty nice too, once we can sneak it for 5. And then I'm kind of tempted to make a ninja token as opposed to drawing more cards.
I won't let Kamigawa fail my family.
So then we have a good ninjutsu enabler in play already.
Got all kinds of actions.
And then next turn we could maybe ninjutsu something like the Naga and still Fatal Push with Revolt enabled. Now Emissary does get back the Siren. And the Foundry is 2 mana to make a servo. Alrighty. So I'm kind of down for a Naga plus Fatal Push. And then can still draw with Kaito. Opponent makes a token, which can maybe trump. But the Naga also helps us go wide. And then it's gotta be Emissary over Siren. Although, let's see here, we can draw first. The Siren does help them play Krang more effectively, but yeah, we can just Fatal Push Emissary, take that out so they can't recur their artifacts as easily. And then next turn we're in a pretty good position to keep setting up more ninjutsu synergies. Sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing Shelob, black-green spiders. Our hand has some good ninjutsu enablers, not that many payoffs. But we can dig pretty deep with a Fairy Seer, so I'll try it. This does not have reach, which is also relevant. I'll just get a Watery Grave, so then the Chapel's untapped as well. Our opponent's got the Spider Sleeve. I've not seen that one before. So looking for a third land and maybe some ninjutsu payoffs. Can probably do better than a tap land. Can always pick up Fairy Seer with Splinter and then replay it. Although now I probably want to push the Caryatid, found the land. So can go for Outcast plus Fatal Push. And a Twitching Doll is next. Okay, so attack with both, pick up Fairy with Splinter, this also gets pumped, we can replay it, and maybe even play the Siren as well. So then I can fetch another blue source maybe. Get Hallowed Fountain. Requiting Hex deals with a twitching doll, so that's something. We're still lacking a bit of oomph. But at least we're slowing the opponent down as well. Opponent ramps with a rampant growth. So I will have to keep up Wash Away to deal with Shelob next turn. Which means we get to Surveil, Hex, keep up Wash Away. Opponent's got their own Bitter Triumph. Alrighty, so stick to the plan, can use the map as well. And then probably explore onto the Siren, since the Outcast is the most reliable enabler, although Fairy Seer is the best value to pick back up. So then we can attack. Hex. And then end of turn Surveil. So we can look for a ninjutsu card. Roaming Throne resolves. So no 6 land yet. Which means they're holding action. Dream Thief, happy to put in the graveyard since we can still draw a card with it. And another Surveil land. Alright, at least I can play Splinter. And this Wash Away is not too obvious. Opponent's still at 11, so they do have some time to draw out of it. Luckily it's an Echoing Cavern and not a Cavern of Souls, so we can still counter here. And our opponent did not like that. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing another Raph and Mikey. And Fatal Push is not good on the matchup since they don't have any Mana Elves. Baleful Strix also not quite what we need, so this is a mulligan. Biting Palm could be decent, but now we're lacking a cheap enabler for ninjutsu. And then the top end is also quite pricey. So unless Brainstorm magically improves my hands, I don't think this is gonna work. Okay, Wash Away is a big one. And we've got a Dark Leo, so this one I can try. And then the Turncoat's not gonna be needed if we have a Wash Away. Of course our opponent can ramp into other stuff as well. So maybe Satoru is less important. Because I'm not going to be doing a ton of sneaking since we're lacking the enablers for it. So then I'm just going to cast this on 2, probably Splinter on 3. And then I guess I prefer Turncoat over Satoru. Our opponent could still have removal spells. Now with the Baleful Strix, I could be convinced to play that first so we can ninjutsu this, or sneak it. Although playing Splinter next turn still has the highest upside. And our opponent needs pretty much like a Lightning Bolt to deal 3 damage. Alright, so we get to enable Dark Leo. Trigger twice. Still lacking the 5 ninjas, but next turn we can half the opponent's life total twice. And we'll be ready with Wash Away. So yeah, this is pretty much the ideal start in this matchup. You can still play a Baleful Strix. And then I could also ninjutsu the Skull Snatcher for what it's worth. Alright. So our opponent's all the way to 4. And we've got the perfect answer lined up, unless they're land is Cavern of Souls. It is not. It was even a tapped land. So yeah, now our opponent's just super dead. Can also activate Splinter. Alright, and that'll do it. Awesome. So yeah, we got to see this Esper Ninjas deck in action. I think the key to success starts with your opening hand, so make sure to mulligan hands that don't have cheap enablers to set up your ninjutsu synergies, otherwise the deck is going to feel a bit clunky. And then hopefully you get to enable your ninjutsu cards with Splinter in play, and that can snowball pretty quickly. So yeah, overall, pretty happy with where this deck ended up. If we get more ninjutsu or sneak cards in future sets, this deck can easily be modified and upgraded, but for now this seems like a pretty solid starting point. So that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.